Hello and welcome to another jungle video, and in this one we shall be taking a look at Season 10 Warwick Jungle and how you can best use them to carry as you learn the ins and out of this League of Legends preseason. Yes, everyone likes to point to his very high win rate, but the greater changes to the meta, runes and other champion balance have positioned us in a very powerful situation, so hopefully it doesn't receive any unjustified nerfs. Now, I recently did quite an intricate Warwick guide about his abilities and how to use them, which all still holds true despite the change of season, so we're going to focus on gameplay patterns that will help you win more in Season 10 specifically. So while most of you saw the cinematic ability overview, I'll just put it up again briefly for those who haven't. We will be covering runes, items, abilities, first clears ganking patterns, and a note on using your abilities fluidly, as well as what to do in team fights. So if you want more specific champion guides, please be sure to click the like button and subscribe if you do enjoy them, and please do comment below what your favorite jungler is in Season 10, unless it's Shaco. So ultimately, people are wondering why Warwick is so good right now, and the images on your screen should give you a small clue. That's right, objective obsessions combined with an insanely strong Dragon Soul for the 4th Drake, in addition to that ridiculous true damage that was removed from the old Conqueror that would actually affect his E, means a strong rotational and skirmish meta will reward the early to mid game power spiking junglers that can do all these things very well. 1 Herald isn't so great, but 2 Heralds? That's much better. And the reason I mentioned 2 Heralds is that it can be huge for tower play gold and tower secures that further enable your dragon takes, and so ensuring that first dragon for your team really opens up the map, as you can easily snuff out the Heralds in between those Drake spawns while the enemy jungler can't really do anything because they can't beat you 1v1 and their lanes aren't in a position to rotate because hopefully you've been ganking and also punishing them for greeting by hanging around at low HP. The W chase then comes in strong. So now let's assume everyone is aware of the basics of his abilities, the basis on which he used them, and we'll go into more depth about how to use them shortly, so if you're not too familiar, don't worry. But for now, let's hop into our rune discussion. Now classically, PTA has been the go-to page. You see it on your screen now. Press the attack is just by far the best keystone for Warwick. It's something that just procs in your ultimate alone, but mostly exposes enemies to all sources of incoming damage, which is absolutely huge for a champion that doesn't really scale too hard into the late game. It's also excellent for your ganking procedures, and also gives them that excellent fighting potential in those rivers around those dragons when invading enemy junglers. So all in all, it's just a well-rounded, excellent keystone for the champion. You combine that with Triumph, Alacrity, and then Last Stand, which of course synergizes very well as he gets lower HP, and of course as his attack speed increases, the lower health the enemy target is. So as everyone's getting low in a tight fight, the Last Stand kicks in as well, giving you even more damage. So basically it's Warwick's perfect rune. As you can see from this example here, even though the Warwick play did miss an auto or 2 at the end, nonetheless it gives you such insane survivability as well as increased damage along with PTA, creating a devastating kit. Now before we get into the secondary pages, we need to talk about the power of Conqueror. This works much better with him in Season 10 because he can still stack it very quickly. The healing component and adaptive damage is huge on him. Unlike PTA, this is a much more useful rune in skirmishes and 1v1s when you are by yourself and looking to play more a solo style. And so I would highly suggest this as an amazing top lane Warwick choice, and still prefer PTA in the jungle, which helps with your ganking, dragon fights, and general utility the further the game goes on. Conqueror on the top lane Warwick as you get ahead can and does work very well also in the jungle, but with the slight gap in win rate to PTA, the statistics even suggest that it is still a much better rune to go. And finally, don't be afraid to go Tenacity instead of Alacrity versus heavy CC team comps. Now we talked about secondary pages quite a bit in the last video. The same secondary pages are an option to you right now. Do you want the utility in roaming from the celerity and water walking, better for low elo players? Do you want some additional healing, perhaps some scaling movement speed from a Relentless Hunter? Then you go Domination. And also, my favorite page, and what you're seeing a lot of other works also go, is that Conditioning and Revitalize. This gives you combat effectiveness in the mid and later stages of the game, and given how strong the mid game skirmishes need to be, that can be quite useful. And of course, Revitalize goes really well with your Q and if you build Warrior, which we will talk about later in the video. In this great skirmish meta around objectives and all that, having additional healing in those fights is absolutely huge. Alright, so you've got the runes down and you're not running Aftershock, good job, thank you very much. And we're into the game. Here are the first clear options showing up on your screen now, and I must point out that you will start Q, go W and then E, and at the early game goal with Warwick is to get Dragon Prio and create the ability to sneak it, while also shoving the enemy jungler away from those rivers. That's quite a loaded statement, but this just means your clear needs to be efficient and end with a gank. Now, it doesn't mean you need to get kills necessarily, but you should at least be chunking and burning sums. Now, the blue side X red buff clear still exists, and you can still do that if you're looking for a bit more of a safe early game, but you do remember from our Jungle Roots video, you can get level 3 from just the blue side, or if you're going to do red, gromp, and blue. Whatever lets you get to the lane you want to gank first and quickly, as well as be a step ahead of the enemy jungler, is the route you want to take in that game. Even if you just do the blue side, do not be afraid to do blue side camps and head to the bottom lane if you're on that side of the map. Anything is possible now, and the fact that you can show much sooner and then transition that into follow-up ganks on other lanes as well as scuttle crab control lays the foundation for that nice level 4, level 5 sneaky dragon. Just be aware you must pay attention to the lane states, and of course you don't want to sneak it without having vision control in the area, so having a control ward and a scanner with you is most important when you're trying to do this strategy. Now if you're not having an active early game and you're only farming, you get your Tiamat, you're clearing, you're chilling, you're doing it wrong. Because a good gank sets up the foundation for all your objective control. It creates lane priority when you didn't perhaps have any, it puts their enemy jungle's focus on other parts of the map, such as soon as they show on the top lane or spend too many resources in a bottom lane gank because your bottom lane has that lead, that gives you the freebie to take the dragon. Or if you have your W, rotate and counter gank and get even more kills and then take the dragon. The choice is up to you, and that's why he's so versatile at the moment. The main point is, once you've done that first clear, you need to look at ganks, and you need to look at ganking a lot while farming in between. We talked about this in a video previously, but Warwick is so good at doing both these things. So let's combine forces and look at abilities and ganks and how we take control of games using this champion. Don't forget that your Q is a follow-through when you press it at the right time. We looked at the details of that in the previous Warwick guide. I'll show the clip now. So using that to follow through and stick to targets, as well as avoiding the dragon knockup, means you can follow Cassidins and stick to fights that other champions could not. Again, another example of something that gives him an advantage over the rest of the junglers at the moment. Just remember that an unfortunately timed Q on a gank or a fight can make you end up under a tower or in a situation where you don't want to be. It is the bread and butter ability giving you that heal, scaling with AD and AP. It's really the thing that can mislead people in those close fights. You can be having a good battle, autoing attack each other down, enemy thinks they got you low, you throw in that classic auto Q auto to get off even more heals, and they end up dying. Remember, it also does percentage HP damage on the enemy target, so it can really do a good chomp against those tanks as well. The Q is only as good as how you use it with your E in most cases, especially in ganking. It ensures enemies are fearing and running away from you in a direction that you want. E-ing them towards the safety of the tower is never the right option, so holding that Q into an E activation on the other side of a target can maximize the target stunned and also reposition yourself between the enemy and their safety point. This is the most core ganking mechanic because you can use it on minions to reposition yourself. If there's a low HP target on the other side, you can go through another champion just to get to them. It really is the quintessential Warwick combo. Don't forget that your E is also a damage reduction ability, so using it when you're caught in precarious situations can buy you enough time to use the rest of your abilities to grab those kills and frustrate enemies with your insane survivability. To that end, your ability to heal from your passive as well as your W increase in attack speed versus low HP targets means you don't actually want to run from fights and instead want to juke it out more often than not. And we have talked about this a little bit in the video already, but the ability to chase down enemies passively or by activating your W prior to a gank is why so many players don't like facing him. If you're low HP from a fight, you will be chased down and the cleanup kill will be righteously gory. And on that note, please don't buy that item on him, we don't need it. And finally, we all know how the ultimate works, but I need to drive home some points because too many Warwick players complain about this ability or don't use it properly in the first place. Firstly, it makes it so that you cannot be disrupted, and thus timing it correctly on ganks versus things like a Veigar here can give you kills that most champions couldn't get because they'd just be stunned in place. You can even tilt the Veigar further later in the game when you use it to go and steal a Baron. So literally, as you can see, this ability used correctly can be absolutely game-changing. And yes, it can also be a bit weird regarding the hitboxes and your movement speed. You can shoot past people flying across the map when they're super low in health. However, on that note, it can be used just to close the gap on low health targets, so it's not really an issue if you don't always hit it as an engage tool to get your fear off, to go ahead and secure that kill. Just remember that stacking the suppression with your E and also positioning such that the ultimate hits the right target is always your main goal. Hitting your R will actually trigger the E, so it can buy you time without being disrupted, but if that isn't necessary, try and save your E for fights when you need those damage reduction moments or to keep that enemy ADC from fleeing the situation. After all, when you have more damage in your build, you really do want to be the one taking out the squishy targets, especially if you're going more with a warrior build. The overall goal of disrupting and dividing the enemy's team focus is still the primary mission, but if there's an assassin or dive comp against you, your R and your E can be invaluable in peeling those pesky Katarinas. There are many videos about Warwick micro mechanics and teamfighting on this channel, so for more about that, look in the Warwick playlist. Being able to stitch together all of your abilities, understanding your rune set in order to make plays in ganks, fights, tower dives, any situation so that you can easily fall back to those objectives and maintain objective control is core Warwick gameplay, and in order to aid that we must move on to the final section, itemization for Season 10. A lot of people have asked whether anything has changed drastically, and I'll be direct, not really. But because of the huge mid-game win conditions that are currently the meta, your first core items need to be on point because it's highly unlikely you end up at full build. To that end, we must rush Tiamat. This is the foundation of all possible Warwick build paths. And after that, basically going full tank is the most accessible standard build path. Get your Cinder Hulk, get your tanky items, finish your Titanic later. However, my personal advice is to have the right clear in mind, get that first kill, gain 1v1 control over the enemy jungler, get a crab or two, maybe another gank. The point is that you have an early lead, yes? So you want to finish that Titanic Hydra after finishing your Red Smite. Red Smite's really good in those 1v1 situations when you're fighting a lot, much more useful than Blue Smite, which you don't really need to chase down targets. However, into things like Hecarim, I would actually build it. But the point is you go Tiamat, get your Red Smite, finish Titanic, and then you can go Cinder Hulk and complete your tanky items as dictated by the enemy team comp. However, if you prefer to be more of a raw spud jungler, merch coming soon, and really drive home that mid-game win, Warrior is an absolute beast of an item. And while maxing W is still the overall best way to go because of the scaling and utility it provides in your skirmishes with attack speed, movement speed, the CDR boost on activation, the healing and DPS you get from the increased attack speed on the W coupled with your passive, all of this means it is still the go-to ability to max. The fact that Q got buffed just means that it comes online much sooner when you put 3 points into it. However, if you are rushing the warrior, if you are raw spud jungling around the map, putting 3 points in the W to get that utility, to get some of those things online before maxing Q, can really give your Q and your combat stats a huge chunk of damage, a lot of healing. Basically, it can make you a pseudo assassin at this stage if you have a 2 or 3 level lead, and you should on the enemy jungler if you're playing him correctly. The laners definitely won't expect that damage at all. Now, following Warrior and having that team meta ready, you would normally go into your more tanky builds, focusing on the deadmans before finishing Titanic later in the game. Bloodrazor is much more situational, although there are some Warwick mains who love to build this item no matter what. It just makes you a lot more squishy, and the Warrior Q combo is something that's so obscene in terms of deception that you can cause in those close fights. If you are looking for more of a DPS build, I do recommend that. Now, in terms of itemization options outside of this, no matter your jungle item, Sheen is an absolutely dominating item, and the on-hit effect is triggered by your Q. As such, Iceborne provides tankiness, CDR, mana, and stickiness, and the typical Virkayu build that I've done over the years since his rework was that Cinder Hulk, Titanic, Iceborne into tanky, perhaps even a GA at the end. But if you're truly ahead and you want to go something a bit more bruiser, and you have a lot of gold, the Cinder Hulk Titanic Triforce is the best overall split push and 1v9 build as you head into the late game. However, let's be honest, it's very rare you will have the gold to buy this, and by the time you complete those items, the game will be in a phase where alternative items will be more useful to you as a jungler. The Cinder Hulk build as well as the Warrior build can always benefit from a wit's end. It's better in the tanky build, gives you a bit more sustain and damage in an otherwise health stacking environment. A GA into any of the builds, as I mentioned, can be absolutely huge when you are really far ahead and you want to close a game out in the mid game. A Deceptive GA with that amount of AD is a huge sleeper item. But do not forget the Zhonya's. Now, most people won't talk about it, Silk Boots and Zhonya's. Why? He has a lot of AP scaling and does a lot of AP damage. The big difference between that GA and Zhonya's will be determined by your role in teamfights. If coming back with more HP is better or worse than being able to time your stasis appropriately. And that's essentially it. The items are very similar, so you just have to decide if you want to time when you go under, or if you want to come back with HP and have less control over it. Finally, Abyssal Mask can be great when your team has a lot of magic damage. Also, if you have an Ornn in your team to upgrade you, just remember it amplifies your own magic damage as well, and the mana and sustain provided by its passive can more than aid you in certain matchups. That's just my brief overview of itemization with a couple of example builds. Yes, there are other things that can work, like the Sterix Gauge for example, but there are definitely better paths than others. I hope this video gives you some clarity as to why he's strong at the moment and what you should have in mind as you navigate the Season 10 preseason with Warwick. Use him well, use him fast, and make sure to get those dragons. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you were able to enjoy and learn something. Please do like, share, and comment if you did. We do like to reach around 1,000 likes per video. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more champion guides and other jungle videos coming your way very soon. And as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial, which might even be on Saturday, so be ready.